And hello. For some reason, stuff on stream is not working the way it should be. I can't see chat like I should. There's just so much stuff that's just going freaking wrong, man. But yeah, we shall hopefully get this sorted. I don't know why we're not seeing the Fugies down below. Also, hi Goat.
Hello, Goat.
Hello, Goat. I'm gonna keep you guys open on the on main monitor. That's right, chat.
Here.
That's right, chat. You are main monitor content today. Revan, hello. Yeah, you're my main monitor content. Nice. All right, so yeah, I don't know what's up with OBS today. It's just decided to be a pain in the butt. Sorry we were so late. Yes, I know that the ad is about to start in 5 minutes. Sorry we're so late. It not entirely my fault, but regardless, it was a good thing that happened. Like, I think you'll forgive me. I think you'll forgive me for us being late. We were directing Cotton as Albedo. So yeah.
Yeah.
That was why we were late. I think you forgive me. Right? Am I forgiven? Am I forgiven?
Eh.
Yeah.
Unacceptable.
Look, if you had heard Cotton's recording, you would be
I thought
like,
it was
yeah,
nice.
totally. Yeah, yeah. It was good.
I get you. I get you.
Yeah.
I need to update the stuff, so I will shortly get to that. That being said, yes. We shall
my-
get started shortly. Yeah, my God, too.
Yes. Oh my god.
Also,
Yes,
I
yes,
finally
yes. Oh
put
my
in. I finally put in my auditions for Slime 10, and I had a lot of fun with the king.
I'll bet.
Hooray.
I'll
My
bet.
friend Ethan also did some too.
Awesome. There
Yeah.
we go.
He really wanted to audition, so that's cool.
You went to audition for a dying character.
Yeah. I mean, it's cool.
Yeah, yeah.
He, I'm
They
sure
don't die
people can
until
do death
next
screams, okay?
episode. It's okay.
It'll be fine. They can do death screams of being turned into a Schmeat cube. It's
Oh,
fine.
Schmeat cube.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's fine.
That's only for the king. The others go out different ways.
Oh yeah, of course they get fucking laser nuked, laser lobotomies.
Well, not Rosin. Rosin just transfers bodies.
Oh yeah,
Because he's a beast like that.
Raisin. Yeah.
Brazen
Yes.
raisin. Brazen raisin.
Yes. Huh. Fucking.
So stupid. Brazen raisin. This is
Sorry, I was
so-
also just briefly looking at
I'm
some.
racing on a brazen.
Yeah.
Sometimes you
Millions
just
of
gotta
people.
raisin on a brazen.
Mm.
It'll be fun on a bun.
Hundreds of beamers.
The toast with the most.
Yes.
Yes.
Beamers for me.
Beamers for me. Millions of
Not
beamers.
beavers.
Beavers.
Not
for free.
beavers. You guys ever see the fucking? It's a movie called Hundreds of Beavers. It's actually insanely funny. You ever seen that movie or make the time to watch it? It's so good. You can watch the whole thing on YouTube for free, but it's like, it's so stupid. I love it. It's basically live action Looney Tunes, and it's wonderful.
I've seen
I've seen things.
what is it? What is it called? Smokey and the Bandit. They
heard
talk
that's
about
really
beavers
good, too.
A lot in there. It is.
My dad really
It
likes that
is.
movie.
It's very good.
Picked up
Smoking the
beaver.
Schmanet.
I'm being chased down by this Texas County Manny.
Texas County Manning. Yeah.
That's what they call sheriffs.
Yeah. You're not wrong.
They aren't. They really aren't.
Okay, so there we go. Copy image. And there we go. Good stuff. Good stuff. Good stuff. Good stuff. All right. I mean, I'm not waiting on anything in particular on my end.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just doing a thing.
I didn't know. You
On my
didn't say
end.
start or anything, so I'm like, do I read? Do I not?
Did
What
you
do I do? Give me direction!
start?
What's my motivation?
Okay. You're a reader.
You're a
Go.
bounty hunter. Right. I'm a bounty hunter.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
Chapter
not Sunday,
1.
I'm not in my church.
Coping with the Grey Rat Sisters. After a long, grueling journey, my sisters Norn and Aisha had finally made it to my house in the city of Sharia. At the moment, they were sitting at the dining table, eating something I'd quickly tossed together. Any good? I asked cautiously. Yeah, called Aisha. It's great! Norn stayed silent. She wasn't eating as enthusiastically as her sister, but she hadn't grimaced or complained either. I was no match for Sylphie in the kitchen, but I'd at least managed to make something edible. Speaking of Sylphie, she'd left for work a little earlier. She'd wanted to stick around, but her responsibilities to Princess Ariel had to come first. I'd chosen to take the day off from school so I could talk things over with my sisters. Once they finished their meal, the three of us moved into the living room. Aisha and Norn sat next to each other on the couch, and I took the chair across from them. After serving them tea and letting them relax for a while, I finally decided to broach the main subject. Well, I guess I should have said this earlier, but it's good to see you two. I'm really glad you made it here safely. Thank you, older brother, said Aisha with a demure smile. It's a pleasure to be here.
Very demure.
My younger, yes, yes, my younger sister was wearing a maid uniform as usual. Her outfit had been a bit too big for her last time we met, but it fit perfectly now. In fact, judging from the small patches I saw here and there, it was probably the exact same outfit as before. She seemed to be curious about my house. I'd noticed her neat brown ponytail swaying back and forth as she shot glances around the living room. Norn, on the other hand, was staring quietly at the floor in the manner of a much younger child. She wore a cute blue dress adorned with a few frilly touches. Pretty typical garb for children in Melicion, but bound to stick out around here. Her golden hair looked a bit longer than Aisha's, but it was hard to tell, since she had it pinned up behind her head with a big fashionable clip. It sounds like you really pulled your weight on the trip up here, Aisha. I'm impressed. Naturally. I was very motivated to see you again as quickly as I could, brother dear. Aisha still wore that calm smile, but something about the way she talked struck me as a little odd. Look, this is going to be your home starting today. You can relax a little if you want. Be a bit more casual, maybe. Thank you very much, Aisha replied. I appreciate that. But even if we are family, this is still your house. It wouldn't be right for me to impose on you without offering anything in return. I was hoping I could provide some help with the household chores at least. Yeah, it felt like she was being really distant. Or maybe just formal? It was actually making me uncomfortable. Incidentally, my dear sister. Yes, dearest brother? Could you maybe stop talking like that, please? Oh, but I couldn't possibly. You always speak so politely to me. How could I fail to do the same? Oh, so this was my fault. I did tend to be a bit formal in my speech. Apparently, it had made Aisha feel like she had to do the same. Okay, well, I'll be more casual with you from now on. By all means, said Aisha with a smile. We are siblings after all. I'm going to continue to address you politely, though, since you're the head of this household. Oh, come on, just follow my lead, won't you? Well, whatever. It wasn't a bad idea for her to practice speaking formally. Choosing the right tone for a given situation was a valuable social skill, after all. Still, it sounded like Aisha had interpreted my politeness to mean I wanted to keep her at arm's length. Did everyone I'd met over the last few years feel the same way?
Yes.
I sort of defaulted to formal speech in all my interactions since it felt more respectful. But maybe I ought to try out some casual banter next time I ran into an old acquaintance. Hey, Regard, how's it going? You've really changed, man. Did you put on some weight or what? The beard's new, too. What? You're not Regard? Damn, changed your name, too? Well, good to see you're still a grumpy jerk, at least. On second thought, maybe not. It's only natural to speak politely with someone you respect, right? Just imagining trying to banter with Regard or Roxy made me want to punch myself in the face. Well, anyway,
Just imagine
It's
talking
good-
to Eris like that.
It's good to have you both here. It might take a while for us to get used to living in the same house, but we'll figure it out. Of course, said Aisha energetically. Her enthusiasm was palpable. It reminded me of the way Persena got when you dangled a slab of meat in front of her. I felt like Aisha would do anything I asked her to right now. Norn, on the other hand, still wasn't saying anything, and the expression on her face looked kind of gloomy. I got the feeling she hadn't come to stay with me willingly. The way we'd been reunited probably hadn't helped matters either. From her perspective, I'd wandered home drunk with a strange man on my arm. For the moment, it seemed best to take things slow and treat her with care. Anyway, I had no idea you'd gotten married to... Oh, wait. Anyway, I had no idea you'd gotten married to Sylvie, said Aisha. When did that happen, anyway? You must have been surprised, too, right, Norn? Norn shook her head slightly at this attempt to draw her into the conversation. I don't really remember Miss Sylvie that well. That was a little disappointing, but it made sense. Aisha had studied basic etiquette with Sylphie back in Buena Village, while Norn hadn't spent that much time with her. Uh, so what's the story, brother dear? Asked Aisha, leaning forward eagerly. What happened to that heiress girl you were with before? I wasn't eager to revisit that topic, but it made sense they were curious about it. Well, you see... Smiling awkwardly, I took a few minutes to fill my sisters in on the recent development in my life. I started off with my return to the Fatoa region, where I split up with Eris and became an adventurer. I mentioned that I'd contracted a disease and headed to the University of Magic in hopes of finding a cure, and then I explained that I'd met Sylphie here, and she'd managed to cure my illness. Of course, I didn't specify that the illness was erectile dysfunction, or the means by which Sylphie had cured it. That's not the sort of thing you talk about with a pair of 10-year-old girls. I did make sure to mention Sylphie was in a slightly tricky situation that required her to dress as a man in public. Princess Ariel had already given me permission to explain this to anyone who I thought needed to know. To be honest, it might have been smarter not to tell my little sisters about this. They were still just children after all, but if they were going to be living with us from now on, they'd inevitably figure out the truth at some point, or at least start to harbor some suspicions. Considering the trouble that could cause down the road, I opted to give them a basic outline of the situation up front. And that brings us up to the present, I guess. After 5 minutes or so, I'd covered all the most important events. Go to the next fucking page, Jesus. Norn was still staring at the floor with a troubled look on her face, but Aisha was studying me with concern. So your disease is gone now, then? She asked. For good? Yeah, I'm fully cured. Nothing to worry about. I'm still doing a rehab session every few days, though. Okay, Aisha murmured thoughtfully before clapping her hands together. Oh, I almost forgot. What is it? I've got something for you from Dad. He told me to hand it over right away once I found you. Popping up off the couch, she dashed up the second floor. Before long, she was trotting back down the stairs with a rectangular box in her hands. Here you go! For some reason, the thing was secured with 3 large locks. It never hurt to take extra precautions, of course. But this just felt like just broadcasting to the whole world that there was something valuable inside. Then again, maybe the locks were just there to keep Aisha and Norn from poking at the contents and possibly losing them. I used a touch of magic to snap all 3 locks open simultaneously. Oh, I've got the keys here if you want. Ah, thanks. Aisha had frozen in surprise with a ring of keys in her hand. I took them from her and dropped them in my pocket. Not that I needed them. Now, time to open the mystery box. Wow. Well, this was a stash, all right. There was a significant amount of money inside, including a dozen or so king's dollars and a small hoard of various precious metals. It was hard to appraise their exact value at a glance, but they'd fetch a pretty penny if I sold them all. This had to be the financial support Paul had mentioned in his letter. If I used it wisely, this would be enough to keep my family afloat for a decade or so. I'd have to make sure I didn't spend it carelessly. There were also 2 sheets of paper attached to the inside of the box's lid. I pulled them off and took a look. The first was the same letter from Paul that had already reached me a few days earlier, but the second was a message from Lilia. It went into some detail about the current state of Aisha and Norn's education and elaborated on what she saw as their flaws. In Lilia's opinion, Aisha was a talented child who rarely failed at anything she tried, but this had left her with a swollen head. I was advised to be strict with her. Norn was an ordinary little girl, but constantly being compared to her sister at school had left her sullen and withdrawn, putting up a tough front for all to see. I was asked to treat her gently and with kindness. It felt like Lilia was being kind of harsh on her daughter for some reason. She still seemed to view herself as Paul's mistress or lover, rather than his second wife. Maybe that had something to do with it. Honestly, my gut instinct was to treat my little sisters as equally as possible. Still, according to this letter, Aisha really was a remarkably talented kid. As of a year ago, Lilia had basically run out of things to teach her. She had a good grasp on reading, writing, math, history, and geography. What was more, she was skilled at cleaning, laundry, general housework, and cooking. She'd even reached the beginner tier in the water god style, and with all 6 of the basic elements of magic too. While she'd been enrolled in a school at Melicion, Roxy and the others had shown up soon afterward. So Aisha had spent barely any time inside a classroom of late. And even so, she'd gotten this far. It was no wonder Norn had a bit of an inferiority complex. Norn was basically an ordinary kid. She had no notable strengths or weaknesses academically, which put her well ahead of where Eris was at her age, at least. In most classes, she landed right in the middle of the pack, or just a bit below it. Her life had been seriously disrupted by all this travel, though. Given the circumstances, you could say she was actually doing pretty well. She definitely hadn't given up on improving, at least. There weren't any other messages in the box. I'd been hoping for a few words from Roxy, honestly, but these were intimate family letters, so she'd probably refrained out of politeness. Okay, then, I said, setting down the letters. Once you're both settled in, I guess our next step will be to get you back in school. What? No! For some reason, it was Aisha who immediately piped up to object. I was a little surprised by that. Maybe her last experience in the educational system hadn't been too pleasant. I don't have anything left to learn in school, Rudius. I worked really hard so I could be a good maid for you. Okay, but I want to be your maid. You promised, remember? Look, I've still got the thing you gave me. Undoing her ponytail, Aisha showed me what she'd used to keep it in place. It was part of the forehead protector I'd given her back in the day. She'd altered the protective metal plate to turn it into a hair ornament. I had to admit, it made me happy to see that she'd been holding on to the thing all these years. But that had nothing to do with the topic at hand. Honestly, I was okay with her not attending school if she didn't want to. Your desire to learn new things is more important than whether you're sitting in a classroom all day. And if you lack the desire, attending school is just a waste of time. I sure hadn't gotten anything out of my time in junior high school. That said, Paul's letter had clearly instructed me to get both of my sisters enrolled in school. The concept of mandatory education wasn't really a thing in this world, but even so. Okay, well, I want you to take the entrance exam for the University of Magic at least. I'll make up my mind based on the results. Huh? Oh, I get it. Okay, no problem. Aisha's smile was full of confidence. She seemed convinced she could score top marks on any test I threw at her. Of course, if she could manage that, then it was probably fine for her to stop attending school, and I'd be able to justify my decision to our father. Norn, why don't you take the test too, while we're at it? Norn's eyes flicked toward me when I spoke, but she didn't move her head. This was starting to get to me. Was the kid going to give me the silent treatment for the rest of my life, or what? I think I might fail it, though, she finally murmured after a long pause. It felt like the first time she'd actually spoken to me, which wasn't true at all, of course, but I still felt kind of relieved. It kind of hurt to be ignored, you know? Don't worry too much about that, Norn. Anyone can get into this school if they have enough money. Oh, wait, no, it was the other. Don't worry about that too much, Norn. Anyone can get into this school if they have enough money, I said. What? I don't want you to buy me a spot? Whoops. Guess I made it sound like I was going to sneak her in through the back door. Hey, Norn! You shouldn't talk to Rudius like that, hissed Aisha. You heard what he said, didn't you? He said he's going to bribe someone to let me in. Well, maybe if you could take a test to save your life, he wouldn't need to. Are you calling me stupid? Shouted Norn, grabbing her sister by the hair. Aisha grabbed Norn's wrist right back and took a swipe at her face. In the blink of an eye, they were pulling and scratching at each other furiously, but not too effectively. In a way, it was almost nice to see such a normal fight between two children. Better than one of them punching the other in the jaw, then straddling them for a brutal pummeling. That said, though, a little scrap wasn't the worst thing in the world. This one was my fault. I needed to intervene. Cut it out, you two! The words came out sharper than I'd expected. The two of them jerked in surprise and instantly stopped moving their hands. Norn looked down at the floor again, her expression even more sullen than before. I could see tears gathering in her eyes. We had a bit of a problem here, clearly. She was even more sensitive about this topic than I'd expected. Let me explain, Norn. The university in this city lets everybody attend regardless of their age, race, or talents, as long as they can pay the fees. I didn't mean that I was going to pay someone off to let you in. Sniffling softly, Norn wiped the tears from her eyes but didn't reply. You remember my tutor Roxy, right? She went here too. It's a good school with lots of nice professors who can teach you all sorts of things. You might just find you're interested in there. I'd started to say that she might find something she was better at than her sister, but thought better of it mid-sentence. Then that this definitely wasn't a good time to be comparing them. Norn kept staring at the floor for a while, but eventually she spoke. Okay, I'll take the dumb test. As soon as the words were out of her mouth, she pushed her chair back loudly and walked out of the living room. Norn! Aisha shouted at her back. We're not done talking yet! Oh, shut up! Norn stomped her way up the stairs. A few seconds later, a door slammed shut up on the second floor. This was going to be tricky, all right. The girl was clearly at a tough age, and she had a prickly personality. I wasn't sure how well I was equipped to deal with her. Honestly, Norn never changes, said Aisha, shrugging her shoulders. It's such a hassle having to indulge my sulky children. Don't you agree, Rudius? We had some issues on this front, too, though. This kind of attitude wasn't going to help matters at all. Aisha. Yes? I don't want you insulting Norn like that. Especially not about her performance in school. What? Aisha said, pouting. But she's barely even trying, Rudius. It might look that way to you, sure. But I think she's doing her best in her own way. Well, if you say so, I'll try to keep my opinions to myself. That was nice to hear, but she didn't sound especially willing. Anything I said probably wouldn't be too convincing right now. I didn't know either of them very well, and I didn't have the faintest clue how to deal with 10-year-old girls either. This was going to be a rocky road. Early that afternoon, I left my two sisters at the house and made a trip to the University of Magic. I made a beeline for the faculty offices, tracked down Vice Principal Genius, and quickly explained the situation. They were both attending other schools previously, yes? I think they should be able to keep up with the introductory courses then. It would be best for them to take the exam at their earliest convenience. After a little discussion, we settled on 1 week from today for the date of their test. They wouldn't have much time to study, but that wasn't really an issue. I must say I'm rather excited to meet them, Genius said. If they're your sisters, they must be quite talented. One of them is a bit of a prodigy, but the other's just an ordinary girl. I do hope you're not just being modest again. Why, I half expect them to both be capable of silent spellcasting. No, nothing of the sort. As we engaged in this polite back and forth, an unrelated thought popped into my mind. By the way, Vice Principal Genius, do you happen to know if Bodigatti is on campus today? Sir Bodigatti. I don't believe I've seen him today, no. Ah, all right then. For such a big, loud guy, Body could be real elusive when he wanted to be. But when he did decide to make an appearance, he was impossible to miss. If you have some business with him, I could pass along a message. Nah, it's nothing urgent. I'm just hoping to sit down and have a talk with him about a mutual acquaintance of ours. I think there might be a misunderstanding I could clear up. Understood. Should I happen to see him, I'll certainly let him know. I thanked the vice principal politely for his help, then went on my way. I'd meant to head straight home afterward, but had some spare time, so I dropped in on Nanahoshi instead. I knocked at her door and stepped inside, but found her research room empty. That was unusual at this hour. The girl was basically a shut-in after all. I took a peek in her dedicated experiment room, but she wasn't in there either. I'd been strictly forbidden from entering her bedroom, but I knocked on the door just in case. A long, miserable groan emerged from inside. It sounded like she was in distress. I hesitated, wondering if I should try to enter, but after a little while, Nanahoshi opened the door herself. Her face was alarmingly pallid. Hey, are you all right? My head is killing me. I think I'm gonna be sick. Gosh, she stinks of booze! Come to think of it, it was no surprise she was hungover. She'd really gone for broke last night. If anything, she was lucky she hadn't given herself alcohol poisoning. Come sit down for a second, Nanahoshi. I'll fix you up. I dragged my stumbling friend into her experiment room, seated her in a chair, and then took her head between my hands. After leading off with a basic detoxification spell, I added a little healing magic to help with the pain. Phew. Thanks, Rudius. I owe you one. Shaking her head slowly, Nanahoshi pressed her fingers to her temples. After a moment, she turned and put on the mask she'd left lying on her table. I was speaking to Silent Seven Star now, apparently. Anyway, is there something you needed from me? If it's about your reward, it's not ready yet. I'd appreciate a little patience. Her words were as cool as ever, but there was a hint of embarrassment in her voice. Could she be one of those kuderes I'd heard so much about? I don't need anything, I said. My two little sisters showed up at my house all of a sudden, so I came by campus to arrange for them to take the entrance exam. I just stopped by to see you since I was in the neighborhood. Your sisters? Wait, are these your sisters from the other world? Were they brought here as well? Nah, they're my sisters from this world. They were born and raised here. I see. Nanahoshi murmured thoughtfully, staring at my face. Well, if they're your sisters in this world, I imagine they're quite adorable. Wait, are you complimenting my looks or something? By the standards of our world, you're an objectively handsome man. I don't know what you look like on the other side, but right now, you could pass for a European model. Wouldn't you agree? I guess. Wasn't expecting that. I had to watch my step around this girl. In my past life, I might have assumed she had a thing for me. But I wasn't a virgin anymore, damn it. I wasn't even single. She wasn't going to mess with my head that easily. How old are they? Nanahoshi asked. They're both 10, I think. I see. I've got a little brother about the same age, actually. But I suppose he's older than me now. If time's passing at the same rate back home. It was hard to tell through the mask, but she sounded nostalgic, probably remembering her life in Japan. Personally, I didn't have many pleasant memories associated with the word brother. Well, now you've got me craving pudding, Nanahoshi muttered. What? Where did that come from? Uh, do you have fond memories of pudding or something? The little jerk used to eat the ones I put in the fridge for later. Those things were really expensive, too. Classic little brother stuff. It didn't strike me as the sweetest of memories, but it had Nanahoshi homesick, clearly. She was looking up at the ceiling, holding back tears. I averted my eyes to avoid embarrassing her. Well, anyway, I'll stop by again soon, okay? I said. All right. Um, sorry for all the trouble earlier. By the way, you've improved my opinion of you quite a bit. Just don't fall in love with me, kid. You'll get burned. Excuse me? Are you even hearing yourself right now? Come on, that was supposed to be a laugh line. Once I gave her the cue, Nanahoshi did chuckle a little, but it sounded kind of forced. Kids these days. No appreciation for the classics. At any rate, the girl clearly wasn't in any shape to be conducting experiments today. Not that I had time to help out either. We'd have to resume our research later once things had calmed down a bit. Once the school day was over, I met up with Sylphie and we headed home together. I wanted to get her advice about Norn and Aisha. She was much closer to their age, so I was hoping she might have some insight. Before I could broach the subject, though, Sylphie spoke up. Oh, right. Let's stop by the market, Rudy. We've got more people in the house now, so we're going to need more food. Sounded reasonable enough to me. We made a little detour. As soon as we set foot inside the marketplace, the sweet smell of stewing beans hit my nose from all directions. The Commerce District Market was always bustling in the evening hours. People tend to think of markets as an early morning thing, but the ones in this area sold a lot of meat supplies by hunters or adventurers. Hunters had unpredictable schedules, but adventurers tended to spend their days slaying monsters out in the forests or plains. Naturally, the meat they brought back with them in the evenings tended to go on sale at night. There wasn't much variety in the food available here, and most ingredients were fairly expensive, but the Kingdom of Renoa and the other magic nations were actually better off than most countries in this region. If you could afford it, there was at least meat available here. If you headed out further east, you found countries where there was little fresh food to be had at any price. Apart from the market itself, you could also find some jobs for adventurers posted in this area of the city. Most of these involve magically freezing fresh meats. Jobs popular with younger university students who'd learned basic magic and needed some pocket change. Sylvie and I wandered around, picking out ingredients for dinner. I took the opportunity to fill her in about everything that had happened today. Well, I think you're right, she said. It sounds like the two of them don't get along very well. I'm not very sure what they're thinking, honestly. I guess I don't know how to see the world through a kid's eyes anymore. It's tough, yeah. Aisha sounds determined to become our household maid instead of going to school, though. You have any thoughts about that? Hmm. I haven't been able to devote much time to the housework, what with everything else. So personally, I'd kind of appreciate the help. Sylvie's smile looked sincere. Nice to know she didn't see it as an intrusion on her domain or anything. The thing is, though, we're the adults here, I said, and she's a kid. Yep. Do you think we have a responsibility to send her to school? She might end up discovering some new interests there, right? Hmm. Well, maybe you're right. We could encourage her to take all sorts of weird classes and see if anything appeals to her. Sylvie paused thoughtfully and put her hand to her chin, seemingly torn between options I'd placed in front of her. Then I followed her gaze and realized she was considering two differently priced cuts of ham. Come on, Sylvie. I'm seriously conflicted about this. At least think it through with me. I am thinking. But you know, Rudy, I'm pretty sure you're underestimating Aisha a bit. She's a very clever girl. I know. So what? Well, I think she'll do just fine for herself, whether she goes to school or not. Hmm. That said, maybe we shouldn't be overthinking this. Letting her do what she wants is the simplest option, right? I hadn't expected such a strong show of confidence in my sister, but Sylvie had known them when they were much younger, hadn't she? She must have seen what Aisha was capable of firsthand. I'm more concerned. I'm more concerned about Norn, to be honest, she said. She's obviously anxious, and I think she misses your dad and Richard. We have to make sure we take good care of her, okay? Yeah, you're right about that. Sylvie's voice was calm, her words reasonable and measured. It made me realize how flustered I was in contrast. My wife really was a reliable woman. This felt like I was being given advice by my old friend, Master Fitz, which I was, in a way. So basically, we give Aisha the freedom to do what she wants and put Norn on rails for the moment, I said. On rails? It means we set a path for her to follow, basically. Ah, okay. Yeah, I think that sounds good. Was it really okay to treat the two of them so differently? Well, Aisha was much further along than Norn right now. Ignoring that fact and treating them exactly the same wouldn't make much sense. Recognizing their differences wasn't the same as playing favorites. Um, that said, Rudy, it's ultimately your decision. Sorry if I sounded a little bossy. I shook my head. Nah, you were a big help. I think I know how I want to approach this now. I won't be able to help out that much, though, Sylvie replied, scratching the back of her ear with a troubled expression. I've still got my duties with Princess Ariel and all. Her job did keep her away from home a lot, and she always seemed guilty whenever that caused me even a minor inconvenience. Sometimes I felt like her job caused her more stress than she was letting on. We were married now, after all, and there was the possibility I'd ask her to quit. On an impulse, I decided to follow up on this thought. Tell me something, Sylviette, my dear. What is it, my dearest Rudius? Let's say I told you to quit your job with Princess Ariel before we got hitched. What would you have done? I tried to phrase the question as lightly as possible, but when Sylvie turned to me, her expression was very serious. I might have turned you down, I guess. Huh? Huh. That actually stings a little. Maybe I should have built up to the question more gradually or something. Well, okay then. So, she'd pick Ariel over me, huh? Right. Oh, apparently picking up on my reaction, Sylvie suddenly got very flustered. Don't get the wrong idea, Rudy. I love you very much. You know that. I mean, there's more to it than that. Even I barely know how to explain it, to be honest. It's this big, warm jumble of feelings. She really was too cute when she got thrown off balance like this. Well, I guess they're all different kinds of love, basically. I mean, for one thing. Oh, wait, no. Well, I guess they're all different kinds of love, basically. I mean, for one thing, I really want to have a baby with you. As she spoke those words, Sylvie reflexively rubbed a hand over her belly. Now she had me blushing as well. Had she forgotten we were in public? But I love Princess Ariel too, you know. In a different way, of course. She's a really dear friend, I guess. I hadn't actually heard her put her feelings about Ariel into words before. Now that she'd got started, though, the words kept coming. Princess Ariel might look perfect from the outside, but she has plenty of flaws and weaknesses. I know you'd I know you'd be just fine without me around, Rudy. But if the princess didn't have me and Luke keeping an eye on her, she wouldn't last a week. I couldn't bear to just abandon her. Sylvie paused for a moment to catch her breath and scratch behind her ears again, then continued awkwardly. Um, but you know, being married to you is, well, it's kind of a dream come true for me. I don't want to give that up either, as long as you still have me. Sylvie seemed to be under the impression that it was unfair for her to even ask this much. Rather than choosing between me and Ariel, she felt like she was taking advantage of my kindness to have her cake and eat it too. Maybe that was why she was always so accommodating when she was with me. It was all completely ridiculous, of course. Instead of responding, I leaned over and planted a kiss on Sylvie's cheek, prompting hoots of amusement and a few jeers from all around us. We'd clearly attracted some attention. Blushing red out of the tips of her ears, Sylvie quickly put her sunglasses on. Master Fitz was cuter than ever these days. After a few minutes, my wife managed to calm down enough so that we could resume our grocery run. We drifted off the main topic at some point, but at least I'd gotten her advice on the most important short-term problems. With any luck, she'd hit it off with Norn and Aisha. That would be a big help. Hold on. There we go. I wasn't too confident I'd ever be able to understand the mind of a preteen girl. Uh, anyway, I might have to lean on your help for these two sometimes, Sylvie. I'm not great with girls. That's okay. We're married, remember? I'll help you out anytime you need me. Sylvie's smile was downright radiant. It was nice to have such a charming and reliable wife in my life. Of course, she seemed to think Princess Ariel would be lost without her, whereas I'd be fine on my own. That was interesting. By the same token, though, Sylvie could surely manage just fine without me around. In that respect, at least things were no longer like the old days. 1 week later, Aisha took her entrance exam as scheduled and earned a perfect score. Chapter 2: The Living Maid and the Boarding School Student. That afternoon, I walked home with Norn and Aisha from the University of Magic. They'd both taken a standard written test. It was a general exam given to most potential students, regardless of their age. Some sections covered various academic subjects, while others covered the 6 fundamental disciplines of magic. It didn't sound anything like the test I'd been given, but that was only to be expected. In any case, Aisha had aced her exam. The kingdom of Renoa had some fundamental cultural differences from Millis. I was pretty sure the curriculum they taught their children was at least a little different. And yet, Aisha had scored perfectly for the first test she'd ever taken in this country. I had to admit I was impressed. Genius, likewise, had been so shocked to see a 10-year-old perform so well that he'd offered to admit her as a special student under certain conditions. But of course, that wasn't what I'd promised my sister. All right then, I held up my end of the bargain, Aisha announced triumphantly as we entered the house. I'm now officially your servant, Rudius. You really want to become the family maid, then? Even though you're a part of the family? No, no, I'm your maid, not the family's. So her goal was To be her brother's personal servant. That struck me as a little bizarre, but I couldn't exactly back out of the bargain now. Well, all right. In that case, make sure you do what I tell you from now on, okay? But of course, I'm at your disposal, master. It was kind of nice to hear a girl calling me that for once, rather than Zenoba. If it wasn't my little sister saying it, I'd probably have gotten excited. Let's just put aside the fact that I was currently a married man. That said, let's keep an open mind about your future, I said. If you end up wanting to study something, just let me know. Well, I'm sure there are a few things I'll still need to learn. Perhaps you'd be so kind as to teach me personally, young master. Putting a finger to her lips, Aisha fluttered her eyes at me. I caught her drift, but decided it was easiest to play dumb. If the kid ever came out and asked me to teach her how to make babies, I'd have to sit her down and give her a thorough sex ed lecture. Without any hands on demonstrations, of course. He's learning. By the way, is there a reason you're calling me master all of a sudden? Well, I'm going to be your servant from now on, sir. It's only natural that I address you appropriately. Oh, great. Now she was back to the ridiculous formal language. I liked it better when you just called me Rudius, to be honest. Can't we stick with that? I'm terribly sorry, but I need to maintain at least a semblance of professionalism. The kid had a solid vocabulary. No wonder she'd done so well on that test. No point in pushing the issue for now. Sylphie might look at me a little funny for a while, but I felt like Aisha had earned the right to do what she wanted. Okay, then. Make sure you consult Sylphie before you take on any jobs for yourself. Got it? Of course. My mother taught me all about the duties of a maid, I assure you. Leave everything to me. Folding her hands in front of her, Aisha bowed deeply to me. Apparently, I now had a little sister maid. I had to admit, the words had a strangely powerful ring to them. They sounded better than housekeeper or dropout, anyway, which is probably what they would have called her back in Japan. Norn's results had been completely ordinary. From what Ginny has told me, she'd scored slightly below average for her age. To be fair, the kid had spent a solid year traveling to this city, and then I'd thrown a test at her before she even had time to get her bearings. She'd probably have done much better if I'd arranged her a few tutoring sessions first. In other words, she'd performed just fine, except in comparison to Aisha. I didn't see the need to read too much into this. We'd just have to help her improve bit by bit. She might never be at the very top of her class. But what did that matter? As long as she learned the basic skills she needed to function in society, that was good enough for me. You don't have to stand out from the crowd to live a happy, fulfilling life. Do you have any thoughts on what you'd like to study, Norn? I asked. My sister didn't respond. She was hanging her head again, pouting slightly as she avoided my gaze. It didn't seem like she was warming up to me. At all. I'd been hoping to break the ice between us, but I had no idea where to start. I don't know. All the options that well off the top of my head, I guess. Oh wait. I don't know all the options that well off the top of my head, I guess, I said. But I think okay, no, I gotta I don't know all the options that well off the top of my head, I guess, I said. But I think you usually start off with 2 or 3 years of general classes before you have to pick a department anyway. The university has a lot of interesting introductory courses, so maybe you can try a bunch of and see if there's a subject you like. Oh, and if nothing particularly interests you, you could always go with healing magic. Our mom used to be a healer too, remember? There aren't many healers in these parts, so you could land a job easily once you graduate. Norn wasn't responding to anything I said, so I ended up prattling on for quite a while in this vein. Eventually, I noticed that she was looking at me with an expression that suggested she wanted to speak. I shut my mouth and waited. I think I want to try living in the dorms there. Her voice was tense and anxious, but she'd managed to get the words out. I took a moment to think over what she said. The dorms, huh? It would have been easy enough to flatly refuse, but I resisted the impulse. It had obviously taken a lot of courage for her to even raise this subject. My initial reaction was that she was just too young. 10-year-old girls didn't usually strike it out on their own. However, living in the university dorms wasn't quite the same as renting a place of your own. You almost always had a roommate, for one thing. Norn knew almost no one in this city, and she didn't have any friends here. If she lived in the dorms, that could change quickly. Her age might be a bit of a problem on that front, but the university was open to students of all ages. I knew for a fact that there were some kids even younger than her living there. The dorms were a safe environment with some fairly clear rules everyone had to follow. Even a child of Norn's age could live comfortably there in theory. Personally, I would have liked to get to know my sister better by living with her, but from the looks of things, forcing her to stick around might just make her resent me even more than she already did. In my previous life, I'd spent many years as a shut in. I'd refused to engage with the rest of the world, locking myself up in my room instead. For a while, my family tried all sorts of schemes to get through to me. They tempted me with expensive gifts, bought me delicious foods, and talked about my future in bright, optimistic tones. And every single time, it just made me withdraw further from them. It felt like they saw me as an animal in need of training rather than a human being. I didn't want Norn to feel like that. I didn't want her to feel trapped here. I didn't want us both to be on edge every single day, trying to read each other's moods and thoughts. Maybe it would be better for me to keep an eye on her from a distance. If she found a place where she could feel a little more comfortable, maybe it would be easier for us to see each other clearly. There was the Aisha thing to consider too. She tended to be condescending with her sister. I'd warned her to be careful, but she didn't even seem aware that she was doing it half the time. Fixing that was going to be a long-term project. As long as she was living in this house, Norn would be constantly exposed to her sister's scorn, and she'd see me, the brother she praised every single day. On top of it all, both Aisha and I both had some unusual natural talents. I didn't think of myself as a world-class magician or anything, but most people considered me highly skilled. It's tough to grow up normal in a house where your siblings were exceptional. I'd been through that myself the last time around. In the worst case scenario, I could go so far as to imagine Norn running away from home someday. And I knew how badly that might turn out, especially for a young girl. Some sick bastard might take her in and start demanding favors or something. Compared to that, she'd be much better off moving into a safe dorm room now. Sylphie spent a lot of time in those dorms too. She did come back to stay here every third night, but in between those visits, she stayed with Princess Ariel. If something came up, she'd be right there to help Norn out, and fortunately, Norn seemed to like her. Maybe they'd opened up to each other in the bath that first night or something. The more I thought about this, the more it sounded like a decent idea. 10 was a young age to be living in a dorm, but the experience might be good for her. She'd have to learn to socialize and cooperate with other kids around her age. Okay, Norn, if that's what you want, I think I can arrange it. I'll submit the application for you. Wait, what? I shouted Aisha, her mouth gaping in disbelief. Why are you letting her do what she wants? She didn't even get a good score. So much for all the talk about professionalism. It must have slipped her mind at some point in the last 5 minutes. Aisha, I worked really hard for this, Rudius. It isn't fair. I could understand where Aisha was coming from. From her perspective, it must have looked like I was playing favorites with Norn. As far as Aisha was concerned, she'd earned the right to do what she wanted by getting a perfect score on her test. I had to assume she'd done a lot of secret studying over the last week to make that happen. Norn, on the other hand, hadn't done much of anything, but I'd decided to give her what she wanted anyway. It must have seemed blatantly unfair. What had my parents in my past life said when I kicked up a fuss about things like this? I couldn't remember exactly, but I felt like it was mostly just variations on "you'll do what you're told" or "we know what's best for you, young man." Had those words ever satisfied me? Well, no. Would that stern approach work on Aisha, then? Nah, probably not. She was a very clever kid, of course. If I explained my reasoning in detail, she might understand. Maybe, if I was lucky. It couldn't hurt to try and talk this out, at least. Aisha, I'm not rewarding Norn for anything. I just gave it some thought, and I came to the conclusion that living in the dorms might be what's best for her. But Norn doesn't know anyone in this city yet, and I don't think she likes being around me that much either, unfortunately. I don't want to keep her trapped in this house if she's going to be miserable here. But Dad said we're supposed to live together. That was a decent point. Now I sort of felt tempted to take it all back. No, that wouldn't be right. My job here wasn't to follow my marching orders blindly. Paul made plenty of mistakes himself, right? My judgment wasn't perfect, of course, but I had to trust it for now. I'm still going to take care of her, of course. You're both my family, and I'm here for you no matter what. But it seems like Norn isn't happy here, and I think living in the dorms might help her find her footing. Now it was Aisha's turn to hang her head in sullen silence. For some reason, there were tears in her eyes. Are you being nicer to her because my mom's just the mistress? She said. The question took me completely by surprise. The instant I heard the word mistress, though, I knew we were in some dangerous territory. Lilia isn't a mistress, Aisha. Who told you she was? Was it Dad? I hope it wasn't Norn. Mom said it herself. And Norn's grandma said it too. The tears were rolling down her face now. Lilia and Norn's grandma. So Zenith's family, then. It was one thing for Lilia to put herself down. I knew she still felt guilty about the whole thing. That was why she'd consciously continued to play the role of the family maid, rather than acting like my mother's equal. Maybe it was natural that she'd expect Aisha to behave the same way toward Norn, Zenith's daughter. I had to assume that Paul treated both his girls the same, but in Lilia's mind, at least, the two of them weren't equal. As for the Latria family, from what I'd heard, they were an aristocratic house with a storied history. I'd only met my aunt Teresa, who wasn't a bad person, but as a group, they probably had some very fixed ideas about adultery and social status. They'd probably doted on Norn while ignoring Aisha altogether. They weren't related to her by blood, after all. Logically, it was hard for me to blame them or Lilia for their actions. Do you like her better? Because I'm just your half-sister? Aisha was sobbing now, rubbing her fists against her crumpled face. But whatever their reasons, they'd still hurt an innocent child. I'd been operating under some mistaken assumption here. Neither of my sisters was going to be easy to take care of. Aisha, I've never thought of I've never thought of Lilia as my dad's mistress. And as far as I'm concerned, you and Norn are both my sisters, plain and simple. But I studied so hard for that test. I tried so hard. Norn just gets to... In between sniffles, Aisha stammered out more complaints. So she had crammed secretly for the test. That must have been stressful. I'd only given her a week's warning, after all. She'd obviously earned that perfect score. Listen, Aisha. What? It might be hard for me to explain this, but I do understand. I know you worked really hard, and I'm proud of you. That's why I agreed to let you do what you wanted. But you said Norn can go live in the dorms, and she... Aisha sniffled loudly at this point, letting her lower lip quiver. It was an effective technique, but I didn't back down. I wasn't actually being unfair here. That's different, Aisha. I'm taking this on a case-by-case basis, okay? If you told me you wanted to go live in the dorms right now, you'd have my permission to do so. But if Norn said she wanted to stay here and do housework instead of going to school, I wouldn't allow that. You earned the right to do that with your score on that test. Aisha frowned and fell silent. And after a painfully long pause, she finally replied, Okay. My arguments clearly hadn't satisfied her, but she ultimately accepted them. Norn just looked on quietly, not looking particularly happy herself. If nothing else, I felt like I was beginning to get a sense of the situation here. Zenith's family had treated Aisha as the illegitimate daughter of Paul's mistress, and Aisha had channeled that into trying to be better than Norn at everything. My dad probably hadn't treated them differently, but circumstances still drove a wedge between them. Their relationship hadn't been twisted out of shape long before they their relationship had been twisted out of shape long before they reached me. Still, the Latria family was a very long way from us now. No one in the city was going to sneer at Aisha because of who her mother was. As long as I played my part carefully, this problem would eventually fade away. By the way, Norn, there is one condition on that offer. I want you to come visit us here once every 10 days at a minimum. Norn frowned at this. Why? Because I'm worried about you. Also, I had a responsibility to keep an eye on her. It wouldn't feel too good to tell Paul that I tossed his darling daughter into a dorm and then forgot about her. Okay, then. Though she looked extremely reluctant, Norn did at least agree. Now that we'd finally worked out an initial plan, it was time for us to rearrange our lives to accommodate it. I arranged to have Norn enrolled at the University of Magic, and I applied to secure her a spot in the dorms. Of course, I also explained the situation with Sylphie and asked her to help Norn out if she ran into any trouble there. What? You're really going to push Norn away like that? Sylphie was critical of my plan at first. Her first impulse was to keep Norn in our house so we could shower her with affection until she started to trust us a little more. It wasn't an unreasonable option, but based on how uncomfortable Norn had looked in the first week, I couldn't convince myself it was our best bet. I think Aisha and Norn might be better off living separately for a little while, I said. It seems like my mom's family and gave Aisha a hard time about being the daughter of a mistress, you know? I don't want to push Norn away, but I think they both need some space right now. Well, I didn't know any of that. All right, then. I guess I'll just have to keep an eye on Norn whenever I can. Sylphie wouldn't be there every day, but it was better than nothing. Hopefully this would all work out for the best. Aisha, for her part, quickly assumed her new role as our household maid. She was very good at it, too. As soon as she started taking over the housework, our lives got noticeably easier. She was already handling both the cleaning and the laundry, which basically meant all my chores had disappeared. I couldn't rub my face against Sylphie's dirty underwear anymore, but I'd just have to deal with that as best I could. Sylphie was still in charge of the grocery shopping and the cooking, at least. That was one role she wanted to hold on to, but Aisha was always there to help her out. Apart from these primary tasks, my new maid also began to deal with a number of things that had never even occurred to me before. She went around greeting our neighbors, for example, and arranged to have our chimney swept. The girl was sharp as a tack and a hard worker to boot. She excelled at everything she put her mind to, and I never saw her make a major mistake. I had to imagine a lot of work went into maintaining that image of perfection. For whatever reason, it seemed she was serious about making this maid thing into her full-time occupation. When she was on the job, she dropped the clingy little sister act and turned into an almost robotic professional. Lilia's training had obviously been very thorough. In general, Aisha spent most of her working hours helping out around the house. When we got home, she'd help Sylphie with dinner or help me get a bath ready. When we were bathing, she'd lay out a change of clothes for us, then brush Sylphie's hair afterward. And on the nights when Sylphie went back out for her night shift, she'd bring her coat to the door and see her off with a polite bow. Sylphie, who wasn't used to being fussed over like this, reacted awkwardly to Aisha's attention. It was always fun to watch them interact. When we had guests over, Aisha also made sure to keep them happy and entertained. Not that this happened very often. The only person who'd stopped by recently was Nanahoshi, seeking to formally thank me for my earlier help. She'd apparently ordered something for me as a reward. The magic circle for a specific summoning spell that I might find helpful. She promised to hand it over and explain how to use it before we moved on to the second stage of her experiments. Aisha had jumped at the chance to lavish her hospitality on our guest. She'd drawn a bath for Nanahoshi, prepared her a change of clothes, and even helped her wash up in there. Nanahoshi had seemed distinctly aggravated by all the attention. When she left, she grumbled something at me about what a monster I was for working my own little sister to the bone. I think she preferred her baths to be peaceful, quiet, and solitary. I'd have to remember to ask Aisha to give her some privacy in there next time. The girl didn't even relax after dinner. When I settled down in the living room, she'd bustle around, keeping the fire roaring or bringing me warm drinks. To be honest, it felt kind of weird to have my own sister acting like my personal servant. But Aisha seemed happy with the arrangement. So I was willing to let things continue like this for a while. I didn't want to force her to do anything she didn't want to. After reaching this conclusion, though, I remembered my theory that your mana capacity is partially determined by how much you use magic as a child. If Aisha wasn't going to attend school, I could at least give her a little training in magic. At the age of 10, her mana capacity probably wasn't going to change that much, but it wasn't set in stone either. And she'd be better off knowing at least intermediate tier offensive magic, too. The beginner spells were enough for an ordinary person living a peaceful life, but the intermediate ones were more useful if you ever needed to defend yourself. Aisha, come over here. Let's practice magic for a while. Oh, are you going to teach me, Rudius? Really? Aisha trotted over to me with a big smile on her face. For all her discipline, the kid tended to let the cool-headed maid character drop whenever she got emotional about something. She still had a ways to go before she'd be a match for Lilia. Yeah, I think it's a good idea for you to learn a little more. I know you might not be that interested, but I am though. Of course I am, she said, hopping up into my lap. Please, go right ahead. The girl could be awful cute when she wanted to. Our first tutoring session was a productive one. Aisha already had a good grasp of the fundamentals. She hadn't taken the time to learn the intermediate spells, but I got the feeling she could have picked them up fairly quickly from the right textbook. Oi.
Oy.
She wasn't capable of silent spellcasting, though. 10 was probably too late for her to learn that particular skill. I ran through a few things, then gave her a simple homework assignment to use as much magic as she could every day until her supply of mana ran dry. That night, Aisha clambered onto my bed and asked, "Can I sleep with you tonight, Rudius?" After seeing her break down in tears the other day, I couldn't bring myself to say no, and it wasn't like it could do any harm anyway. Sure thing. Come on. Without a word of complaint, I pulled back the covers and made room for her. Aisha was smaller than Sylphie, of course, but also warmer. In a cold climate like this, it never hurt to have another heated, huggable pillow in your bed. Of course, this was all purely innocent. Apart from the fact that she was my sister, she was also just a kid. She seemed to have learned a few double entendres at some point, but she probably didn't really understand them. There was no reason to feel too awkward about any of it. If Aisha did eventually develop some sort of crush on me, I'd just have to convince her to give it up. I don't know if sister kissing was inherently immoral or anything, but I liked my family the way it was. And that was how things generally went on the night Sylphie was away. The real problem arose on the next night my wife was around, specifically when we got into bed together. Now that my little sisters were living with us, I decided to hold off on our intimate activities for a while, but when I had a beautiful woman lying next to me, it proved impossible to resist. Normally, I could have contained myself, but normally I had the opportunity to blow off some steam on my own. Unfortunately, Aisha tended to follow me all around the house. I had no privacy these days, and I wasn't about to start pleasuring myself in the school bathrooms or something. The idea was kind of depressing, especially for a happily married man. Unable to find a good solution, I ended up letting things build up for quite a while. I was a young, energetic man. After a solid week with no release at all, I was about ready to explode. And right next to me, there was a cute woman. A cute woman who loved me, never said no, and had earnestly promised to have my baby. The idea of holding back seemed ridiculous, so I didn't. Phew! I ended up going a little overboard, though. I'd locked the door beforehand and used some basic earth magic to muffle the sounds, but hopefully Aisha hadn't peeked in through the keyhole or anything. Wow, you were really something today, Rudy. By the time it was over, Sylphie was exhausted. She was drenched in sweat and her hair was all messed up in a very alluring way. After a few minutes of pillow talk, we wiped ourselves down with towels, put on our usual night clothes, and sat down on the bed together. Our night clothes were made of a soft, comfortable fabric, but they were a bit plain-looking, more like sweatsuits than pajamas. Sylphie seemed to think hers wasn't too flattering, but I personally disagreed. When I looked at her sitting on the bed, it felt like I'd coaxed a girl from the track team into my room or something. The lack of explicit sexiness only made it more exciting. You wouldn't get this effect with flashy red lingerie, like the set heirs had, or with a curvier girl like Linnea or Persena. Plainer clothes just worked on Sylphie for some reason. What's up, Rudy? At some point while I was thinking all this, I'd started running my hands along my wife's slender body from behind. I was very fond of her body. Sylphie wasn't the most curvaceous, but she wasn't flat either. There was almost no fat on her, but she was still soft to the touch. Just touching her like this was enough to get my lightning rod pointing toward the heavens. Do you want more? No, no. You've got, work tomorrow and everything. I'll be good. Just let me rub your chest in the morning, please? I'll be okay. Don't be silly. There's no need to hold back. Sylphie laid back on the bed, opened her legs, and smiled shyly up at me. Come here, Rudy. Why can't there be a picture for that one? Damn it. My self-control instantly collapsed into into its component parts and disappeared into the wind. The word restraint no longer held any meaning for me. Ripping off my clothes roughly, I pressed my hands together and executed a beautiful swan dive toward my waiting wife. Moving on then. Norn had been rather docile for the last few days as we prepared for her move to the school dorms. She didn't say much of anything to me, but it wasn't like she was being hostile either. She came when I called for her, and she listened when I asked her to do something, but it sure didn't feel like we were getting any closer. I was still hoping to improve our relationship, of course. I'd actually tried inviting her to take a bath with me the other day, thinking it might be a decent way to break the ice. Unfortunately, she just grimaced and said no. Aisha promptly popped her head into the room and volunteered to go with me instead. She ended up washing my back and giving me a nice little massage. The girl really could do anything she set her mind to. She was even good at rinsing people down. Not that I wanted her pursuing any career where that was relevant. Within a few days, I managed to finalize the arrangements for Norn's enrollment at the university. Her roommate was a fourth-year student, like Nanahoshi. I'd been hoping for a fifth or sixth year since I knew more people in those classes. The girl also turned out to look something like a parrot-human bird. She had a big, colorful crest on her head that twitched when she was excited or upset. I wasn't sure if her people were demons or beast folk, but it didn't really matter. In any case, her name was Marissa, and I hadn't heard anything about her, or anything bad about her. Come to think of it, this school had a really diverse student body with lots of mixed race people. I'd have to remind Norn to remind her. I'd have to remind Norn to mind her manners and not say anything that might offend someone. I did try to introduce myself to Marissa, by the way, but when I approached her with a smile, she flinched in fear and ran for her life. I didn't even get to say a word to her. Given that reaction, it was probably best if Norn didn't mention she was related to me at school. Lots of people seemed to think I was the boss of some sort of gang. The last thing I wanted was for my reputation to scare kids away from making friends with her. No point in worrying about that now, anyway. Trying to fix all Norn's problems for her would be too overbearing. If I needed to, I could always turn to Sylphie, Luke, or Ariel, or Ariel. They were incredibly popular and always seemed to draw a crowd wherever they went. Spending time with them might help Norn learn some social skills. Then again, there was a chance their fans would just get jealous of her. But maybe that was the kind of adversity she needed to learn how to face. Why does this stuff have to be so damn complicated anyway? At the end of the day, Norn needed to face up to this herself. It was best for me to keep out of it until something actually went wrong. For now, my job was to watch quietly. I was still nervous as hell about it, though. Soon enough, the day of Norn's departure arrived. When I saw her that morning, she was already wearing her new uniform and carrying her bag. Before she left, I gave her a few important things to remember. First, she needed to respect the dorm rules. Secondly, she needed to take her studies seriously. And thirdly, she needed to be respectful to any demons she ran into. I had a lot of other things I wanted to say, but it seemed best to keep it simple for now. Oh, right, one more thing. If you get into trouble at school, make sure you tell me or Sylphie about it. Okay. Norn replied quietly, studying the door frame next to me. Was she ever going to start looking me in the eyes? I was starting to feel kind of anxious about it. Remember to brush your teeth when you wake up and before you go to bed. Yeah. Make sure you take your baths, too. Right. Don't forget to do your homework either. Sure. Let's see, what else? Oh, right. Try not to catch any colds. Well, now she was glaring at me. That was something, at least. Interlude. Master-servant relations. Let's go back in time a little. Before we tell the rest of this story, I want to mention something that happened about a week ago, before Nanahoshi's breakdown. Master, take a look at this! The instant I set foot inside Zenoba's laboratory that day, he called out to me, trotting over with a box in his arms. His face was shining with pride. What is it? It's an arm from that doll we've been studying. Setting the box down on a nearby table, Zenoba took out its contents, a long, slender object covered in cloth. Unwrapping it, he revealed the artificial arm in question. He sliced it up into sections like a carrot. When I looked, wait, pardon. When I looked closely at her, when I looked closely at the places where the paint had chipped off, I noticed what looked like seams in its surface. I tried cutting along them just to see what might happen. And this is what I found! Picking up one of the slices, Zenoba turned it to so I could see the cross section. Hold on. It was covered in an intricate pattern that reminded me of a QR code. This had to be a magic circle of some kind, but it was a peculiar one, totally unlike anything I'd seen Nanahoshi make. It wasn't just that cross section either. Similar patterns were present on every single section of the arm, both the front and back surfaces, and they were all slightly different from each other. Even the ones that shared a section weren't identical. Wow. Okay, I didn't expect the arms to be packed full of magic circles, honestly. It's interesting that they're all so different from each other, too. Looking at them for a while, actually, got me feeling kind of queasy. It almost felt like we were studying the nervous system of a dissected human body or something. I had no idea there even were seams nope. I had no idea there even were seams on that thing. They must have been really subtle. Well, they were mostly hidden by the paint, said Zenoba proudly. It would have been impossible to notice them without first chipping it away. I see. This was Zenoba's first big breakthrough in his research, and he was obviously very excited about it. I wasn't quite as jazzed, since I'd assumed from the start that there had to be some sort of complex magical technology animating the thing. Its movements were very smooth and coordinated, now that I think about it. No, wait. Its movements were very smooth and coordinated, now that I think about it. I guess you need a lot of magical circles to take to make that possible, I mused. Oh? Can you tell what function these patterns would perform, Master? Nope. Never seen anything like them before. Were all of these necessary just to move the arm? Maybe you needed to have a chain of magic circles all throughout the body to control and coordinate its movements. There was always a chance they served some totally different function, too. It was impossible to tell without further research. Until I encountered it, this thing had wandered around that house every night, cleaning up and attacking any threats that it identified. Once its cleaning routine was over, it returned to its home base for recharging. When you thought about it, those were some very complex behavioral patterns. It was smarter than your average robot vacuum, and significantly more violent. Not something you could create by etching a couple of magic circles on its head or torso, I had to imagine. My goal here wasn't just to create a magical Roomba. I wanted to make dolls that could move. I wanted some for myself, and I wanted to sell some for profit. They'd definitely command a high price on the market. I wasn't looking to become a millionaire or anything, you understand. I just wanted some financial security. If I got myself a massive windfall, I'd probably just get careless and squander it. There was also that whole plan about using my work to improve the reputation of the Spurred to consider. Although that was kind of a separate issue. In any case, this was all just a pipe dream for the moment. But maybe one day I'd have the robot made of my dreams. I'm guessing the magic circles most directly responsible for its movements are probably in the head or torso, Zenoba. Try to be careful if you cut there. Of course, Master, Zenoba replied with a cheerful nod. In retrospect, I think this discovery was the reason Zenoba was able to come up with his helpful suggestion when Nanahoshi had her meltdown later. And, thanks to that suggestion, Nanahoshi succeeded in the creation of her own multi-layered magic circles. She even realized her goal of summoning things from a parallel universe, which she'd very nearly given up on. One day, we'd surely realize our own dream of creating the perfect maid robot, and maybe that day would come sooner than expected. Lately, that thought put a spring in my step whenever I headed over to Zenoba's lab. Coming in, Zenoba! I knocked once at my friend's door, then stepped into his chambers. I found myself face to face with a woman who stood by the entrance like she was on guard duty. She wasn't a supermodel, but she had a kind face. Oh, hey Ginger, it's good to see you again. For a moment, the woman studied me suspiciously, but when I greeted her, she relaxed and bowed her head slightly. Hello, Sir Rudius. It's been too long. Her name was Ginger York, and she was a former knight of Shirone, and the loyal bodyguard of third Prince Zenoba. Seeing her again made me feel a bit nostalgic. I've meant to stop by and say hello, Ginger continued, but things have been a bit hectic. Don't worry about it. I should have come over myself, honestly. You escorted my sisters here free of charge, and I didn't even take the time to thank you. I ought to be thanking you. Miss Aisha saved us a great deal of time on our journey. Ginger stepped aside with a smile, and I headed into Zenoba's laboratory. Zenoba and Julie were hard at work at their own projects, as always. Zenoba was sketching diagrams of the magic circles he'd found inside the doll, and Julie was working on her latest figure with a small chisel. That project looked close to completion, so I headed over to inspect it first. How's it coming along, Julie? I think it should be done soon, Grandmaster. What do you think? Hey, that's not half bad. It looks a little too handsome to be Zenoba, though. That's not true. Master's handsome, too. Her sculpting was still a bit sloppy, but she was starting to get a good grasp on the fundamentals. I could offer a few criticisms on the fine details, but since the kid seemed to have a knack for this, it was probably better to let her keep figuring things out for herself. I glanced over at Zenoba's direction, but it looked like he needed some time to finish up. It was at this point that I noticed Ginger was staring at me. What is it, Ginger? Oh, it's nothing. I was just thinking, you've done a lot of growing up, that's all. Well, of course I did. It's been, 4 years since the last time we saw each other? I felt like a lot of people had been commenting on my appearance lately. Maybe I was starting to develop some sex appeal or something. If I hadn't married Sylphie, maybe I could have built myself a harem. The idea had a certain appeal, but it would probably be kind of stressful in practice. I was satisfied with my sex life as it was, anyway. By the way, Ginger, what are you planning to do next? I intend to stay here at Prince Zenoba's side. Oh, so you're resuming your duties as his bodyguard? That's right. I've completed my other mission, and my family back home is being taken care of. The woman's loyalty really was impressive. She'd protected Lilia and Aisha for years at her master's command before finally seeing them to safety. Had Zenoba shown her any appreciation, though? Or even thanked her? Probably not. The guy wasn't the most thoughtful of employers. Hey, Zenoba, don't you think you should give Ginger a reward for all her hard work? Sir Rudius, I wouldn't presume to ask. Or wait, no. Sir Rudius, I wouldn't presume to ask. I suppose you're right, said Zenoba, still focused on his magic circles. Is there aught that you desire, Ginger? Speak freely. The prince could sure sound pompous when he wanted to. Ginger seemed taken aback by this development. This was presumably the first time Zenoba had given her any sort of recognition for her efforts. After thinking it over a few long moments, she dropped to one knee, lowered her head, and spoke. Well then, my lord, would you allow me to see to Julie's education? I understand that she is Sir Rudius's pupil, but her manner ill befits the servant of a prince. Very well, I shall allow it. Thank you, Prince Zenoba. This really wasn't what I had in mind. I mean, educating Julie was ultimately for Zenoba's good, not Ginger's. Then again, maybe there was some unspoken rule that slaves weren't supposed to receive too much education. Humanity was driven out of the Garden of Eden because they ate the fruit of knowledge. Stay ignorant, and you might be perfectly happy to spend the rest of your life dancing around with a fig leaf over your crotch, singing yada all day long. That's why kings prefer their subjects to be as clueless as possible. The less you educate them, the less likely they are to rise up against you. Of course, you're also sabotaging their ability to learn new skills and become more useful, but that's a trade-off lots of rulers are willing to make. In any case, I guess it would have been tricky for Zenoba to grant Ginger a more typical reward like land or treasure anyway, given his current position. She'd probably realize that and keep her request modest out of loyalty. Well, all right then, I said. Back to the grind, I guess. How far have you gotten? I was planning on working on the legs next, Master. Yeah, I've been thinking about that, and I feel like it might be better for us to thoroughly study the circles from inside the arms first. I mean, it's not like you could piece the body parts back together once you've cut them open, right? Might be better to take it slow. That is true. Maybe we can bring in, maybe we can bring in Cliff and Nanahoshi to take a look. They might notice something that we're missing. Zanoba and I leaned over the table and discussed our plans at some length before ultimately deciding to start dissecting the doll's second arm for comparison to the first. Just as we were about to get started, though, I noticed Ginger standing next to me. It looked like she had something to say. Do you need something, Ginger? Sir Rudius, despite his current circumstances, Prince Zanoba is a member of the royal family of Shirone. I know he is your pupil as an artist, but the way you speak to him still strikes me as less than respectful. Hmm? Now that she mentioned it, I'd been more familiar than usual with him today. I was usually a bit more formal in my speech, but after Aisha's remark the other day, I'd unconsciously loosened up a bit. I can understand why a loyal retainer would be annoyed to hear their master addressed in that way. I'd just have to be more polite when Ginger was around. I suppose you're right. Sorry about that. Prince Zanoba's been a good friend to me, so I guess I just... Before I could finish my sentence, Zanoba jumped to his feet with fury in his eyes. Ginger! Springing towards his bodyguard, he grabbed her by the neck and slammed her up against the wall. Julie flinched at the sound and dropped her chisel. How dare you! Master Rudius was finally opening up to me! And now you've ruined everything! How could you? Take it back! Apologize to him immediately! Ginger looked to be in some serious pain. Was he actually squeezing her neck? This was escalating way too fast. Zanoba! I shouted. Stop it! Let her go! Zanoba immediately opened his hand and let Ginger fall. His fingers had left clear red marks on her skin. Ginger tried to reach up to touch her neck, but stopped halfway, grimacing in pain. It looked like he'd broken a bone in her shoulder when he slammed her against the wall. I quickly rushed over and healed her injuries with my magic, and as soon as I was done, she kneeled down in front of me and lowered her head. My sincere apologies, Sir Rudius. She was actually apologizing to me, after Zanoba had nearly killed her. I was speechless with guilt for a moment. She hadn't done anything wrong. Why was she apologizing to me? Finally, I spun around and glared at Zanoba. What is the matter with you? But, Master, she thoughtlessly interjected, knowing nothing of our friendship. Okay, maybe so. Why didn't you just say that to her then? Ginger had served Zanoba faithfully for many years, and she'd protected my family on a long, dangerous journey through unfamiliar territory. It couldn't have been easy, but she'd come all this way out of nothing but loyalty for her exiled master. And when she made a single mistake, his reaction was to throw her up against the wall and start choking her. That was just awful. Our friendship was obviously very important to Zanoba. That was nice to know, but that didn't mean I wanted him mistreating his most loyal guard over it. Sir Rudius. No, Sir Rudius, please. It's quite all right, said Ginger softly, her face calm and composed. I'm proud to see Prince Zanoba stand up for a friend. He's clearly grown as a person since the last time I saw him. What? Seriously? Am I the one being weird here? Maybe it wasn't my place to say anything, but Ginger obviously deserved much better treatment than this. Zanoba. Yes, master. I consider you a good friend. Zanoba's face shone with happiness at these words. I paused for a moment to let him savor them. But I owe Ginger a lot for protecting my family, too. She stuck with them for, 4 years? I'm really grateful to her for that, and I'd appreciate it if you treated her with more kindness. Of course, master, said Zanoba with a serious expression on his face. I apologize for my actions, Ginger. There's no need to apologize, Prince Zanoba, Ginger objected, rising to her feet. I swore an oath of absolute loyalty to you, and I would willingly die at your command. My remark was thoughtless. I sincerely regret what I said. That seemed to be her final word on things, and I saw no point in dragging this out any longer. This was evidently just how the master-servant relationship worked here. What if Zanoba ever made a serious mistake, though? Could Ginger even bring herself to disagree with him? Well, whatever. I was basically an outsider here. I didn't understand how things worked in Shirone, and if I kept butting in, I'd probably just invite more trouble. That alarming incident aside, our research on the automaton was starting to make some real progress. I know I suggested focusing on the arms for now, but it's just, but it's your, I know I suggested focusing on the arms for now, but it's your call. Go with whatever you think is best. I appreciate that, but I agree with your suggestion, Master. Piecing the entire doll back together after we've dissected it might prove difficult. Let's see if we can recreate its arm before moving on to the rest. We spent the rest of the session focused on disassembling and studying the doll's arms. I'd suggested bringing in Cliff and Nanahoshi to help out, but I was leaving those decisions entirely up to Zenoba. There were some things I wanted to try, of course, but it seemed like he was making good progress on his own so far. I didn't feel the need to meddle. I think you can leave the rest to me, Master. It seems I have some talent for this sort of work. Huh. No kidding. No, no. I was a bit surprised as well, but I find the work quite engaging. I'm enjoying myself quite a lot these days. He got to spend the whole day on research that appealed to him, with a dedicated figurine artist working constantly at his side. This was probably as good. Wait. This was probably as good as it got for Zenoba. Still, what was he planning to do after he graduated? Would he keep hanging around this city, playing with his dolls? Well, that was another thing he'd have to work out on his own. It wasn't really my problem to worry about, even if he was here in part because of me. Well, okay then. Keep at it, Zenoba. I'll stop by again soon. I look forward to that, Master. Be nice to Ginger, okay? Of course! At this rate, maybe we'd have another breakthrough before too long. Oh, I need more water. Ugh, okay. Chapter 3: The Boss and His Flunkies. Somehow another month had slipped by, which meant it was time for the regularly scheduled meeting of the Renoa University of Magic's foremost gang of delinquents, by which I mean the special class homeroom. The attendees were the usual suspects: Zenoba, Julie, Cliff, Linnea, Persena, and me. Nanahoshi and Barigari were absent, since the rules didn't apply to them. I wasn't in the best mood this morning. I'd been thinking a lot about my sisters lately, specifically Norn. She'd been living in the dorms for some time now, but giving her the space she wanted hadn't exactly improved our relationship. She usually ignored me when we passed each other in the halls. When she didn't, she just shot me disgusted glares. Okay, maybe the last part was just my persecution complex at work. But in any case, the two of us weren't getting any closer. That was okay though. It made me kind of that was okay though. It made me kind of sad. Or no, that was okay though. It made me kind of sad, but I could live with it. It wasn't like brothers and sisters to be best friends or anything. And even if we didn't get along that well normally, I'd still step in to help Norn if she ever needed me. Hell, I'd be on her professors like a helicopter parent if I had to. My position near the top of this school's pecking order could come in handy there. I could step in to take care of anyone who tried to bully her, for example. And I knew the vice principal personally, so I could turn to him for help if I had to. It's always nice to know you can go over people's heads. I made a note to bring Genius a few modest presents every once in a while. The real problem was this. Norn had been living in that dorm for about a month, but it looked like she hadn't made a single friend yet. When I saw her in the hallways, she was usually alone. She didn't look particularly sad or anything, but it was starting to bother me. You can get by without friends for a while, sure, but was she at least talking to the other people in her class? Was she adjusting to life in the dorms? I was genuinely worried, but I didn't want to get directly involved either. I didn't know many first-year students. The only one who came to mind was a total delinquent, in fact. If I tried to get him to do something, I felt like Norn would figure it out at once and then probably resent me for it. Also, I didn't even remember that guy's name. I did recall that he looked a lot like a Siberian Husky, though. All right there, boss, said Linnea, leaning down to look me in the face. You've been looking awfully gloomy lately. Yeah, for real, added Persena. As loud and irritating as these two could be, half the beast folk in this school idolized them. Even after they made peace with Princess Ariel, you'd often see them wandering the halls surrounded by a pack of loyal lackeys. Somehow I doubted they'd have much advice to offer on the subject of loneliness. Well, don't worry, Meow. We got you a special present to cheer you up. Yep, took us a whole month. With a sly smile, Linnea dropped a large, lumpy bag onto my desk. I looked down at it dubiously. It was hard to tell what might be inside. Hold your horses there, boss. Don't open that until you get back home. Unwrap it in private, you got that? Make sure no one's looking. This was starting to sound seriously fishy. Hopefully this wasn't a sack of happy powder or anything. I knew at least a couple kinds of narcotics were making the rounds of the northern territories and parts of the demon continent. Milis and Asura apparently had some laws restricting their usage, but most of the nations in this region weren't too strict about it. Naturally, I had no intentions of picking up a drug habit. If I got addicted or went into withdrawal, my magic wouldn't be enough to heal me. You needed saintly tier detoxification detoxification spells to deal with that sort of thing. More to the point, I wasn't that desperate to escape reality at the moment. Still, the stuff might come in handy at some point, so I didn't see a reason to refuse. I could always just tell it if I ever, just sell it if I ever got desperate for cash. Well, thanks, I guess. You're welcome, boss. Anything for you, man. Come to think of it, these two lived in the dorms, didn't they? Since they'd been there for 6 years now, they probably knew everyone and everything there was to know. Maybe they'd have some useful information, if not advice. About what you said, though. The thing is, I'm kind of worried about my little sister. Your little sister? Yeah, I think we ran into her once already. That's the little girl you got dolled up like a maid, right? We saw her in the market the other day. She had your scent all over her, boss. Figured you were related. So they'd already met Aisha, huh? She was getting into bed with me on a regular basis. Which probably explained the scent thing. No, not her. I mean my other sister. She's been living in the dorms for a month now. Huh? Wait, there's another one? And she's living in the dorms? Linnea and Prasenna turned to look at each other, their eyes opening wide. Apparently they hadn't run into Norn yet. Or maybe they had, without realizing she was my sister. She didn't spend much time at home, so she probably wouldn't smell like me. Yeah, that's right, I said. I don't think she likes me very much, though. We barely even spoken to each other for a while. I don't know how to get her to warm up to me. Yeah, that might be tricky. We could go around yelling about how cool you are if you want. I hadn't considered an information warfare strategy. Maybe Norn would be more willing to give me a chance if she thought I was the most popular guy in school. But if I gave the job to Linnea and Prasenna, they'd probably just spread a bunch of nonsense about me beating the crap out of people. I'd prefer more of the Rudius saved a puppy angle, honestly. Maybe an edited version of the day I met Julie would work. Anyway, the real problem is that she didn't seem to have any friends yet, I said. She's only been here for a month, so maybe it's too early for me to be worrying about this. But she's a transfer student, you know? I bet she's having a hard time with fitting in. Well, it's early, right? Yeah, maybe, she just hasn't had the time to get to know people yet. For some reason, Linnea and Prasenna seemed a little anxious. They were stumbling over their words, and that usually meant they were hiding something from me. Please don't tell me you two have been picking on my sister. Now you're just being dumb. Of course not, boss. You told us not to pick on anybody weaker than us. Okay, so why are you going pale then? There was definitely something going on here, though I didn't know what yet. In any case, I could probably take advantage of their guilty conscience to ensure they'd intervene if anyone tried to bully Norn. How old is your little sister, boss? Is she older than the maid one or younger? They're the same age. She's 10. Really? Phew. Good to hear. Yeah, we didn't do nothing to her. In other words, they'd done something to somebody. Maybe they'd made a habit of teaching cocky new students their place in the pecking order or something. So, boss, about that present. Don't get mad at us if you don't like it, okay? We worked really hard on it. It seemed kind of weird that they were revisiting this topic now. Why did they look so nervous about it all of a sudden? It was a little bit unsettling, but I was definitely curious to find out what they'd gotten me at this point. Hey, it's the thought that counts, right? Or no, hey, it's the thought that counts, right? I won't get mad, I promise. I wouldn't exactly be overjoyed to find a bunch of dead mice inside or anything, but I wasn't going to hold it against them. At this point, I noticed Cliff looking at me from his seat a few spots over. Hey, you have any advice for this thing with my sister, Cliff? Who says you need friends, anyway? Wow, did somebody need a hug today or what? Still, Cliff wasn't the loner he used to be anymore. He had a Elise now, and me, for whatever that was worth. Maybe Norn would never be as popular as that social butterfly, but I had to hope she'd get to know a few people herself one of these days. Recently, Nanahoshi had begun showing up at the dining hall around lunchtime. Maybe she'd finally figured out the importance of eating actual meals. Not that she was being particularly sociable about it. Noticing my gaze, she turned to glare at me. You need something? Nah, not really. Although Nanahoshi had taken the initiative to introduce Japanese cooking to the campus, she'd almost never ventured out to sample the results until now. She didn't like the food much, and she usually looked a little miserable when she was eating it. You don't seem to be enjoying that, I said. Well, I'm not. I know I'm the one who came up with the recipe, but it's terrible. The ingredients here aren't as good as what we had back in Japan, I guess. That's for sure. Is there any kind of food from this world that you do like? Those potato chips I ate at your house, I guess. Those were good. I guess she meant the ones Sylphie made at home. That made sense. Simple snacks like those didn't taste that different from the ones we had back in Japan. Want us to make you more? That won't be necessary. Okay, then. Next time she came over to use our bath, I'd have some waiting for her. Badigati wasn't here today either. He used to stop by the dining hall on a regular basis, but I hadn't seen him at all in the last month. I really wanted to sit down with him and have a talk about Regard. At least Julie's table manners were starting to improve a little in his absence. Ginger was teaching him some basic etiquette, but it would have been a lost cause with the big man around. The place felt a little empty without him, though. I kind of missed that constant booming laughter of his. The more you laugh, the more you live, right? Maybe I should give it a shot myself. Why are you laughing? Did I do something funny? Master? Grandmaster? All my experiment earned was a bunch of puzzled looks from everyone at the table. It was kind of embarrassing, to be honest. I guess I wasn't cut out to fill Badigati's shoes. What's so amusing if I might ask? Luke had popped out of nowhere. He was looking sharp as ever, but no adoring fans tailed him today. Sylphie wasn't with him either. Nothing. I haven't seen our resident Demon King for a while, so I was trying to summon him with my laughter, I said. I see. In any case, Rudius, could I trouble you to accompany me to the student council room? Luke's expression was troubled. Was something wrong? Sure, no problem. I bolted down the last of my food in a few seconds, rose to my feet, and followed Luke. I couldn't have told you why, but I got the impression Luke was angry about something. He didn't say much on our way to the student council room, and his footsteps were louder than usual. Ariel and Sylphie were waiting for us inside, as I'd expected. The princess's expression was as impressive as ever, but she looked a touch pale. Sylphie seemed kind of anxious, too. The new term had only just begun, but apparently we already had some sort of an incident on our hands. Hello, everyone. Is something wrong? Yes, there is, said Ariel with a small sigh. She hesitated for a moment before continuing. I'm afraid we've noticed a number of first-year girls who live in the dormitories looking rather pale and distressed lately. Really? Now she definitely had my attention. Whatever the cause of this was, it might be having an effect on Norn. In the course of our investigation, we've realized that most of the affected girls were quite pretty, and somewhat flat-chested as well. Crap! Norn met both of those criteria too. I was going to have to cooperate fully with this investigation of theirs. If I managed to save the day, maybe I'd even earn some gratitude from my sister. Today, we managed to get the details out of one victim. Apparently, Linnea and Persena were going around and, Hold on. Linnea and Persena? They said they weren't picking on the weak anymore, but maybe they'd smelled some beef jerky in a new kid's pocket and chased them down or something. That was depressingly plausible. demanding that they take off their underwear and hand it over. Wait, what? I had a very bad feeling about where this was going. Further investigation revealed that they were recently overheard saying, "I bet the boss will love those ones," in the dining hall not long thereafter. From what we understand, they were stashing the underwear they stole in a certain bag. Saying this, Ariel quietly glanced at the present I'd accepted a few hours earlier. Luke and Sylphie did the same, undoubtedly having received a description of what the bag looked like. There was no doubt in my mind that the thing was packed full of plundered panties. Dirty, unwashed ones, in fact. That right there was a bag full of dreams. Unbelievable. When had I ever asked Linnea and Prasanna for a present like this? And why was I getting excited just thinking about it? Damn, I really was a sad excuse for a human being. Rudius, I do apologize, but I decided to forestall the question. It was smarter to take the initiative in a situation like this. Linnea and Prasanna gave me the bag this morning. They told me not to look inside until I was back home, so I can't be totally sure, but I have to assume it contains the objects you're looking for. I see. Just to be clear, did you order them to do this? No, I didn't. I was trying to keep my answers firm and concise. One wrong word could be lethal here, but I'd be all right as long as I kept it simple. This was just a misunderstanding, after all. You weren't involved at any stage, then? Of course not. I only just married Sylphie, remember? I'm not exactly sexually frustrated right now. Did she really think I was the type to carry out a plan this deranged right after I'd sent my own little sister into those dorms? I couldn't prove my innocence, though, so I wasn't sure how to defend myself. There had to be some way to make her understand. Very well, then. I'll take you at your word. With another small sigh, Ariel abruptly cut off her interrogation. Well, that was easier than expected. Thank you, Princess Ariel. I appreciate that. It's all right. I already thought it seemed strange you'd be behind this, considering how thoroughly you seem to be enjoying your nights with Sylphie. I couldn't imagine why you'd want to harass any other girls. Wait, did she know how we were spending our time together? Oh god, had Sylphie told her about those ridiculous lines I used on her the other night? Sylphie, are you giving Princess Ariel reports on our private time? Of course not, protested Sylphie, shaking her head vigorously. I wouldn't tell anyone about that. How did you even find out about this, Princess Ariel? I did believe her. I knew the two of them were close friends, but I couldn't see a girl as shy as Sylphie talking about her sex life to anyone. Not that it wouldn't be that big of a deal if she did, as long as she wasn't complaining about my performance or whatever. Well, I didn't, replied Ariel lightly. I was just fishing for a reaction. I'm glad to hear you're enjoying each other's company, though. Okay, well played. Anyway, what were Prasanna and Linnea thinking? Gathering up an entire bag of freshly worn underwear had to be their stupidest idea yet. Had I ever done or said anything to make them think I wanted... Wait a second. Didn't they say something about bringing me a bunch of panties as a tribute a while ago? Oh, crap, they did. I'd assumed it was a joke at the time, but maybe they'd been serious about it. Well, whatever. This still wasn't my fault, right? Yeah, definitely not. I think this was a misguided attempt at doing me a kindness, so I'd appreciate if you let me scold Linnea and Prasanna myself, I said. Oh, and could you arrange to have the underwear returned to their owners? Just to be clear, I haven't looked inside, let alone touched anything. I handed the bag over to Ariel without hesitation. Linnea and Prasanna might not have meant badly, but I'd have to be firm with them about this. The only panties I liked were freshly removed ones. It didn't do anything for me if I didn't get to see them coming off. Wait, no, that's not the issue here. Very well, then. Ariel peeked briefly inside the bag, then nodded once again. It seemed we'd managed to resolve the matter neatly. I must say, though, Ariel continued, shooting a glance over at Sylphie, this is quite a lot of underwear. Aren't you a bit disappointed to lose such a treasure trove, Rudius? Not at all. I don't have an underwear fetish or anything. I see. Well, my apologies for doubting you. That's quite all right. I'm glad we managed to clear up the misunderstanding. Honestly, I was lucky it played out like this. If I'd actually taken those panties home with me, well, I didn't know how I would have gotten rid of them. It was all too easy to picture myself freaking out freaking out for a while, then soaking them in booze to make an experimental panty beer, which would inevitably lead to Sylphie and Aisha finding them, and then I'd never hear the end of it. Well, that's a relief, said Sylphie softly. I was worried I wasn't satisfying you, Rudy. Ariel and Luke looked over at her with amused expressions on their faces. It took her a second to realize exactly what she'd just said, but then a bright red blush spread across her face. And at that exact moment, the bell rang. Our lunch period was over. Oh, that's not good. We're going to be late for class. I'm very sorry for all the hassle Linny and Persina caused you, Princess Ariel. It's all right, Rudius. These things happen. Luke held the door open and invited me to step through it. Ariel and Sylphie followed, after which he came out himself and locked the door behind him. Let's get going, then. Ariel fell in beside me as we walked. Sylphie and Luke followed slightly behind. Maybe I was supposed to be hanging back too? I wasn't too clear on the etiquette here. Oh, before I could make up my mind, though, we turned the next corner and ran into Norn. She was loitering in the hallway, looking around uncertainly. She pressed her lips together tightly at the sight of me. What's the matter, Norn? I asked. Class is about to start. Instead of replying, Norn turned her face away from mine. By sheer coincidence, she met Princess Ariel's gaze instead. Hello there. I'm Ariel, the president of the student council, Ariel said. When Ariel favored her with a pleasant smile, Norn's face instantly went red. The princess tended to have that effect on people, I guess. I'm, Norn Greyrat. Nice to meet you, Norn. Is something wrong? Your next class will be beginning soon. Well, I'm not sure where the third practice room is. Ah, I see. So she'd been left behind when her class changed rooms, huh? Poor kid. It might sound insignificant, but things like that really hurt when they happen to you as a kid. It seemed my concerns about her turning into a loner might be justified. Luke, would you show her the way, please? Ariel asked. Of course. This way, Norn. It's not far. Gently placing a hand on Norn's back, Luke led her off down the hallway. My sister's face was crimson with embarrassment. It was understandable, since Luke was a handsome guy, but I'd have to warn her about him later. The man was a born playboy. Just before they turned the corner, Norn paused to look back at us. Her gaze darted between me, Ariel, and Sylphie for a moment, but then she turned around again and left, without having said a single word to me. It made me feel a little sad. Once classes were over, I had Linny and Persina meet me in the back of the main building. I had a great deal to say to them about the events that had taken place today. The two of them showed up in high spirits. I think they liked the idea of a secret meeting behind the school. It was exactly the sort of place you'd have a dramatic scene in some romantic drama, after all. What's up, boss? Why'd you have us come all the way back here? Finally ready to admit you're in love with us? Well, you better run the plan by Fitz first. Don't want her getting mad at us. I almost felt bad about spoiling their good mood. Almost. We need to talk about that bag you gave me, I said. I handed it over to Princess Ariel at lunch and asked her to give its contents back to their owners. At first, their faces were blank with confusion, but a moment later, they started elbowing each other in the side and hissing at each other. I told you so! He didn't want him after all! It's your fault, Linnea! You said the boss loved panties! What? You thought so too? I wanted us to test the waters first, by giving him yours! Why just me? That wouldn't be fair! Yeah, that's why we grabbed the dorm kids too! That's not what I meant! You could have given him yours too! Nope, I've got big boobs, so he wouldn't have been interested. It was kind of entertaining to watch their pathetic attempts to blame each other for the situation, but also kind of irritating. Why did they think I only liked flat-chested girls anyways? Okay, pipe down! It felt like they could have gone on forever, so I clapped my hands sharply to interrupt. Do you remember what I told you before, girls? I told you not to pick on anyone weaker than you. You do recall this, right? That got them trembling. Well, we didn't pick on anyone, boss. Honest, Linnea whined. That's right. We just asked him real nicely, added Persina with a whimper. Oh, come on, as if some poor little freshman girl was ever going to say no to a pair of terrifying bullies twice her size. Look, you're beast folk, aren't you? I'd expect you to understand how humiliating it is to have your clothing torn off you. But we gave them new underwear and everything. It was just a trade. Oh, really? From the sound of things, a whole bunch of girls ended up pretty shaken afterwards. Their new ones probably didn't fit right, that's all. We didn't take any panties from the girls who said no, I swear. This sounded different from the way Ariel had described it. That brought me some relief. I'd feel terrible if they'd forcibly ripped anyone's clothes off. I might have been tempted to make them walk around naked in public for a while, just so they'd understand how humiliating it was. You said you wouldn't get mad, boss. You promised. It was just a misunderstanding, you know? Cut us some slack here, man. The two of them were obviously more scared of being punished than anything else. At the end of the day, though, they'd gone to a lot of trouble for my sake. They'd noticed I was feeling down and tried to cheer me up. That was their only motivation here. It was still a nice gesture in that sense, even if I didn't like their present. I had sympathy for their victims, but they basically meant well. It wasn't like they deliberately set out to humiliate anyone, like the bullies who'd targeted me in my previous life. Yeah, they were more like a pair of innocent kids who'd gone around collecting cicada shells, honestly. Would it really be fair for me to slap them with some massive punishment? All right, fine. But if I find out you actually traumatized anyone, I'm going to make you grovel naked in front of them and apologize. Okay, boss. We're sorry. I had a feeling Ariel would make sure their victims were taken care of. With that in mind, I couldn't find it in myself to get too angry at them, which actually surprised me a bit. Maybe I was biased because they were my friends. Tell me something, though. Why the heck did you decide to give me a bunch of underwear as a present anyway? The two of them looked up at me in blank confusion, as if I'd asked the strangest question in the world. I mean, you worship panties, don't you? Yeah, you got the one pair in your special altar and everything. Ah, right. So this was ultimately my fault. I should never have allowed these two idiots to lay eyes upon my holy idol, not even for a second. You've got the wrong idea, I said. I'm not worshipping the panties themselves. They just belong to someone who I do worship. They're a holy relic, basically. Wait, really? We totally thought you were in a panties cult or something. I did have a certain fondness for panties, but I've never taken things that far. Well, now that's cleared up. Make sure you don't repeat this mistake, all right? You got it, boss. We'll be good from now on. Was there anything else that needed to be said? Oh, right. If you really feel the need to give me panties, I'd prefer ones you take off yourselves right in front of me. Huh? Whoops, maybe that part didn't need to be said. Now I had the two of them smirking at me knowingly. I knew it! You do want to mate with us, boss! Well, of course he does. Deep down, he's just another dude. We're irresistible. Wow, this was extremely annoying. It also didn't make that much sense. Shouldn't they be grossed out or something instead of teasing me like this? Did they have a crush on me? Nah, that wasn't it. Okay. This was something different. I could tell they liked me, but it wasn't the same way that Sylphie did. I couldn't put my finger on the exact difference, though. For now, I'd just think of it as a weird kind of friendship. I'd said everything else I needed to, which brought this meeting to an end. My reputation was probably going to take a hit as a result of this incident, but I could live with that. I didn't care that much what people said about me behind my back anyway. As the three of us emerged from behind the building, we bumped into a group of first-year students. They were all carrying their school bags, so it seemed they were heading back to the dorms. The moment they spotted us, they all shifted over to the side of the path to get out of our way. As they were moving, though, I spotted Norn at the very back of the group. She looked at me, and then Linny and Priscilla. Her expression shifted from surprise to one of outrage and disbelief, and then she passed us. She shot me a nasty glare. Linny and Priscilla turned around to watch her go, looking none too pleased with themselves. What's that kid's problem? She's got a real attitude. No fucking kidding. We ought to teach her who's on top around here. Just so you guys know, that was my little sister, I said mildly. Linny and Priscilla cringed, their ears visibly drooping. Well, good to see she's got some spirit. Yeah, she's a real cutie, too. Talk about transparent. With a smile, I thumped the two of them on the shoulders. Try to keep an eye out for her, okay? You got it, boss. We'll play nice. Still, the silent treatment from Norn was really starting to get to me. I wanted us to at least get where we could have a basic conversation. But as long as she was managing okay on her own, it didn't seem right for me to force the issue. For a while, things were relatively uneventful. I wasn't getting any closer to Norn, but she was stopping by the house once every 10 days like she'd promised. I was a little surprised that she didn't disobey me more often, considering the fact she'd obviously disliked me. But for the most part, she didn't push back at me directly, although she did grimace sometimes. When you thought about it, though, I hadn't spent much time with either of my sisters after their infancy. Maybe it was stupid of me to expect they'd think of me as family right off the bat. Aisha's friendly attitude was probably the more unusual of the two. Just because you're related to someone doesn't mean you'll unconditionally enjoy each other's company. I knew that all too well. In fact, family members can often be the people who we resent most bitterly and most persistently. I'd punched my father in front of Norn. Paul and I had made up quickly, and I put that incident behind us. But the memory probably still smoldered in my sister's heart. If she ever brought it up, I'd have to apologize sincerely. Even if it seemed like ancient history to me, the pain and anger might still be fresh to her. There was no need to rush things, though. The two of us would probably be living close to each other for years, or even decades. If it took a year or two for her to warm up to me, I could live with that. It wasn't like siblings had to be best friends with each other. We just needed to find a relationship that felt comfortable for both of us, and that might take some time. Only a few days after I reached this conclusion, I got some alarming news. Norn had shut herself in her room.
And that's what we're going to call it. There we go.
Woo!
65 pages. 25% of the way through. That's what I'm talking
You sure I can't do 4 more?
4 more pages?
You probably could.
Yeah,
that's really
69, dude.
No.
Nice.
No.
You-
All right. That being said, sorry that OBS is having so many issues. I updated OBS recently, and it's just been a giant pain in my butt ever since.
Probably Cotton.
Oh, that's
it probably made
usually what
her
happens
being
when
there
you
made it
update.
nervous.
No.
Yeah, that's gotta be it.
Cotton being there made it nervous, and I was like, oh man. No.
Seriously doubt that. No, it's been acting up for the last couple of days.
These programs are sentient. They know.
God, dear God, I hope not.
See, they know.
That
They
being
know when
said-
you want to stream or do anything, so they're like, nope, not working.
Okay, well, shit, be like that.
Yep.
All right. That being said, though, we're gonna go raid somebody. Who do we want to check out right now?
That's a good question.
Let's see, because we have so many people we follow right now. Let's see, Joel streaming. Miss Blob is playing Pink. The Numbskulls are live.
This blob.
Let's see, Director Nasty. Bucket. You know what? Let's go check out the Numbskulls. Let's go support the Numbskulls.
Numbskulls.
Their tags right now: voice actor, Warhammer 40K, podcast, LGBTQ friendly.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, if they're talking Warhammer, or actually, no, they're playing Infinity Nikki. Why do they have those tags on there? That's so weird. Anyway, I love this. Kicking grandma until all the ink can leave her body. It's okay. She's just a painting. Magic Monday.
I was gonna say she could have been like a Splatoon character.
Could be. But yeah, we're gonna go say hi to the Numbskulls. Remember, guys, that when we go by our raid messages, have a good dog. Any last minute things you guys want to say before we head off and begin the raid? Well, okay, good job, everybody. I'm so excited for the things you said.
I'm sorry, I am a little worn out because
You've been talking for
my
like
voice
2.5 hours. Yeah.
yeah, so
Well, 2 hours.
and
at
then
the very
even
least.
before that, because I recorded for all 3 characters.
I
did that all today.
Yeah, I'll talk more about that in a bit. But yeah, guys, that's it. Let's go say hi to the Numbskulls. Make sure to give them a lot of love and wish them a happy dog.
Yeah.
Have a good dog. Have a good dog, everybody. It's raid time.
Barf, barf.
Raid's here.
How much is